Before thunder echoed across Mount Olympus, before mortals whispered the name Zeus in trembling reverence, there was only silence. A vast, breathing silence called chaos. Not the chaos of disorder, but of pure potential. From this boundless void, the first forms of existence emerged like ripples across still water. Gaia, the living earth; Tartarus, the depth beneath all; Eros, the force of attraction; Erebus, the darkness; and Nyx, the night. These were not beings as we imagine gods today. They were principles of creation, ancient forces that shaped reality itself. From Gaia came Uranus, the sky, her counterpart and consort. Together, they formed the first divine union, heaven and earth intertwined, birthing a race of titanic beings, the Titans. Among them was Cronus, the youngest, whose ambition and cunning would one day shatter the order of his parents. But before the age of the Titans, the universe itself was still in its infancy, wild, untamed, and sacred, in a way modern humanity can hardly comprehend. The myths tell us that Uranus feared his children. The Titans were too powerful, too strange, embodiments of the raw forces of nature. To prevent them from rising, Uranus cast them into the depths of Gaia, burying them within her body. The earth groaned in agony, suffocating beneath her own offspring, and so Gaia conceived a dark plan. She crafted a sickle of adamantine stone, sharp enough to wound even the sky itself, and called upon her son Cronus to use it. Cronus obeyed. When Uranus descended once more to lie upon Gaia, Cronus struck, severing the sky from the earth, ending the ancient order of creation. The blood of Uranus spilled across the land and sea, giving birth to the Furies, the giants, and the goddess Aphrodite, born from the foam. The universe had changed forever. The reign of the Titans had begun. But this new world was not one of harmony. Cronus ruled with fear, haunted by the same prophecy that had doomed his father, that one of his own children would overthrow him. To prevent this, Cronus devoured each child at birth, Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon, swallowing them whole, trapping the next generation of gods within himself. Only one escaped, Zeus. Rhea, Cronus's wife and sister, could no longer bear to see her children consumed. When Zeus was born, she hid him deep within a cave on the island of Crete and wrapped a stone in swaddling cloth for Cronus to swallow instead. Hidden among the roaring drums of the Curetes, the infant god grew strong. His cries were drowned by the beating of shields so Cronus would not hear. As Zeus grew, he learned the truth of his father's tyranny and the suffering of his siblings trapped within that monstrous belly. With cunning and courage, he sought the help of Metis, the goddess of wisdom and transformation. She gave him a potion to make Cronus vomit his children back into the world. When Cronus drank it, the gods of Olympus were reborn, full-grown and furious. Thus began the Titanomachy, the great war between the old gods and the new. The sky and earth trembled for 10 long years as Titans and Olympians clashed. Zeus wielded lightning forged by the Cyclopes, Poseidon commanded the seas, and Hades ruled the shadows. In the end, the Olympians triumphed, and the defeated Titans were hurled into Tartarus, bound by chains forged of divine will. Cronus himself was exiled to the ends of time, where legend says he still sleeps, dreaming of the age before Zeus. But beneath this myth of cosmic battle lies a deeper, more forbidden truth, one whispered by ancient philosophers and hidden within the mystery schools of Greece. The war between the Titans and the Olympians was not merely a battle of gods, but a shift of cosmic consciousness. The Titans represented the primal, chaotic forces of nature, the wild intelligence of the cosmos. The Olympians, led by Zeus, symbolized the emergence of order, hierarchy, and control. It was the moment when divine instinct was replaced by divine law. Zeus's rise was not just a victory, it was a conquest over the old world. The Titan Age, with its raw creativity and connection to the natural cycles, was buried beneath a new celestial regime. Humanity would inherit this order, the idea that power must dominate, that chaos must be subdued. The myths we tell about gods are reflections of our own evolution, and perhaps our own fall from unity. The Greeks later spoke of the Golden Age, a time when Cronus ruled and humans lived in peace without suffering or toil. But when Zeus ascended, that age ended. Mortals were cast into labor, desire, and mortality. The forbidden truth hidden in this story is that Zeus did not simply save creation, he severed it from its source. In the beginning, Heaven and earth were one. Then came the sickle, the separation, and the rise of the thunder god. From that wound, time itself began to flow. The birth of Zeus marked not just the dawn of divine kingship, but the beginning of human history, where the sacred and the mortal were no longer one. To understand the forbidden legends of ancient Greece, we must first look beyond the thunderbolt, beyond Olympus, and remember the world before Zeus, a world where creation was still whole, where gods were not rulers, but living expressions of the universe itself. When the thunder of war faded, and the Olympians claimed their thrones upon Mount Olympus, the world entered a new era. Zeus, now the undisputed ruler of gods and men, cast his lightning as a symbol of law and authority. Yet beneath the radiant sky of victory, something ancient still stirred, whispers of vengeance carried by the winds that blew from the edges of the world. The Titans were defeated, yes, but not destroyed. Most were hurled into Tartarus, the abyss deeper than any mortal mind could imagine, a chasm of eternal fire and silence, guarded by the 100-handed giants, the Hecatonchires. But myths are rarely complete. In the secret teachings of the Orphic cults, and in fragments of ancient texts long lost to time, there are hints that not all Titans were captured. Some vanished before the final strike, fleeing to hidden realms beyond the reach of Zeus's lightning. These exiled Titans became the subject of forbidden legend, beings who carried within them the lost light of the old creation, knowledge of the cosmos that even Zeus could not comprehend. To the priests of the Olympian order, they were heretics and monsters. To the seekers of hidden truth, they were the keepers of the flame before the flame. Among them, it is said, were Oceanus, the great Titan of the encircling sea, who refused to fight against Zeus and thus was spared. Themis, the Titaness of divine law and prophecy, who later became an advisor even to the new gods. And Mnemosyne, the mother of the Muses, who preserved memory itself, perhaps the last memory of the world before Zeus. But others, darker and forgotten, retreated into shadow. Hyperion, lord of the sun's first light, and Coeus, guardian of the axis of heaven, were said to have escaped to distant lands, taking with them the secrets of divine fire and celestial motion. From their exile, the lost Titans became wanderers in myth and time. Some legends claim they crossed the boundaries of the known world, to lands beyond the pillars of Heracles, to islands swallowed by sea and mist. There they built temples of living stone, and whispered to the early humans, teaching them the mysteries of the stars, metallurgy, and the sacred geometry of creation. Others say they descended into the earth itself, becoming the hidden powers that move beneath mountains, the breath within the caverns, the fiery heart of volcanoes. These myths hint that the Titans did not die, but transformed, retreating into the invisible fabric of the world. In the forbidden philosophy of the Pythagoreans and later Hermetic thinkers, this rebellion takes on a deeper meaning. The Titans were not just defeated gods. They were archetypes of divine intellect suppressed by the rise of external authority. Their fall mirrored a spiritual truth. When humanity turned away from its inner fire, it lost direct communion with the cosmos. Zeus's reign, though glorious, represented the ascendancy of order over chaos, but also of obedience over intuition. And yet, rebellion is the heartbeat of creation. From the shadows, the lost Titans continued to influence the world through secret currents, passing their wisdom to mortals who dared to seek it. Ancient initiates of Eleusis and Delphi spoke of titanic energies that slumbered within every soul, the remnants of divine power bound by the will of Zeus, waiting to awaken through ritual, trance, and divine madness. In these mysteries, the human being was not seen as a servant of the gods, but as a microcosm of the Titan itself, a fallen divinity yearning for remembrance. The Orphic hymns even teach that humanity was born from the ashes of the Titans, who were struck down by Zeus for devouring the infant Dionysus. From their remains, mingled with divine essence, came mankind, half light, half darkness. To the initiated, this myth revealed the secret of human duality. We carry within us both the fire of the Titans and the lore of Olympus. But the Olympians feared this truth. A mortal who awakened their inner Titan would no longer bow to the gods, for they would see that the power of creation flowed through their own being. Thus the myth of the lost Titan rebellion was buried, encoded in riddles, disguised as cautionary tales, and later dismissed as primitive superstition. Yet the symbols remained. The sickle, the flame, the serpent, the labyrinth, all echoes of that older order that refused to be forgotten. Some ancient sources even suggest that the lost titans await a cosmic return. The Sibylline prophecies spoke of a reversal of ages, when the chains of Tartarus would weaken, and the old gods would rise once more to challenge the sons of Olympus. This was not seen as apocalypse, but as renewal, a rebalancing of the universe, where wisdom and power would unite again. In the secret language of the mysteries, this event was not merely historical or future, it was internal. The Titan's return symbolized the reawakening of the divine within humanity, the liberation of the bound forces of spirit from the prisons of fear and conformity. To awaken the Titan within is to reclaim the knowledge that once defied Zeus himself. That creation belongs to all consciousness, not just to the rulers of heaven. So when we look upon the myths of rebellion and punishment, of chains and lightning, we are not only reading the story of gods, but of ourselves. For every human spirit has known the rule of Zeus, the imposition of order, the weight of destiny, the silencing of the wild and the free. Yet within that silence, something ancient still breathes, a spark of defiance, an echo from the dawn of the world. The lost titans may have vanished from Olympus, but they never left the earth. They are in the pulse of the volcano, the storm at sea, the hidden fire within the heart of man. And perhaps when humanity once again seeks the forbidden wisdom of the stars, the titans will rise, not as destroyers, but as reminders that before law there was freedom. Long before Zeus raised his thunderbolt and claimed dominion over heaven and earth, an older presence coiled beneath the surface of creation, ancient, watchful, and infinitely wise. Her name was Echidna, the Serpent Mother of Olympus. Though the Olympians themselves would one day deny her, to the priests of Zeus she was a monster. To the sages and mystics of forgotten temples, she was the keeper of the primal wisdom, the embodiment of the divine feminine that even the gods could not destroy. In the earliest myths, the serpent was not a symbol of evil but of renewal, the creature that sheds its skin and is reborn. To the ancients, this represented the eternal cycle of life, death, and rebirth. The serpent was the curve of the cosmos itself, the spiral that mirrored galaxies and seashells alike, and within that symbol lived the memory of Echidna, the mother of all serpents, the guardian of the deep mysteries. According to Hesiod, Echidna was born from Gaia and Tartarus, from the marriage of the earth's womb and the underworld's abyss. Her upper body was that of a beautiful nymph, radiant and immortal, but her lower half was a coiling serpent, vast and terrible. She lived in the shadows beneath the earth, in a cavern where the light of the sun never touched. From there she gave birth to creatures that would haunt the dreams of mortals and gods alike, the Hydra, Cerberus, Chimera, and Sphinx. Yet behind these monstrous forms lay an esoteric truth. Each beast was an aspect of the hidden power that Olympus sought to suppress. For Echidna was more than a monster maker. She was a symbol of the mother wisdom, the creative intelligence that existed before the reign of Zeus. In older traditions, ones buried beneath centuries of patriarchal retelling, the serpent goddess was venerated as the giver of knowledge and the awakener of consciousness. Just as the serpent tempted humanity toward awareness in later myths, in Greece she represented the force that initiates transformation, dangerous, forbidden, but divine. When Zeus rose to power, the old serpent cults began to vanish. Temples once dedicated to goddesses entwined with serpents, like Eurynome, Gaia, and Sophia, were overtaken by the Olympian order. The serpent, once sacred, was recast as a threat to divine authority. The myths were rewritten to portray the serpent as a challenge to the gods, a beast to be slain or subdued. Yet this was not merely a battle between gods and monsters. It was the suppression of the feminine principle, the silencing of the very wisdom that birthed creation itself. Consider the myth of Typhon, Echidna's consort, a creature of fire and storm who rose up against Zeus. Their rebellion was said to be the final echo of the Titan Wars, an attempt by the ancient powers of the earth to reclaim their dominion. In the old texts, Zeus's battle with Typhon shook the heavens and scorched the world. When the dust settled, Zeus had triumphed, burying Typhon beneath Mount Etna, where his fiery breath still fuels the volcano's rage. Yet the myth hides a deeper secret. Typhon and Echidna together represented the dual serpent power, the rising energy of nature, of life itself, that cannot be destroyed, only contained. In mystery traditions, particularly the Orphic and Chthonic cults, Echidna's children were not seen as demons but as guardians. Cerberus guarded the gate to the underworld, a symbol of the boundary between consciousness and the unknown. The Hydra, whose heads multiplied when cut, represented the regenerative power of nature. The Chimera, part lion, part goat, part serpent, embodied the union of the elements. Each so-called monster was a fragment of the forgotten whole, pieces of a truth the Olympians feared, that creation's strength lies in its wildness. To destroy the serpent is to deny transformation, and Zeus, in establishing his rule, sought stability above all else. The Olympian age prized order, control, and hierarchy, the thunderbolt as law, but the Serpent Mother whispered another truth, that life cannot be contained. Even as her children were slain by heroes, Hercules, Perseus, and others, the myths reveal that their deaths were never final. The Hydra returned. The serpent's wisdom re-emerged in new forms, in oracles, in dreams, in the spiraling dance of the Kundalini-like force described later by mystics. There are even secret traditions that say Echidna was never truly defeated. Some claim she retreated into the depths of the earth, slumbering in caverns far below Delphi, where the Pythia, the oracle of Apollo, inhaled her vapors to see beyond the veil. In this version, the oracle's visions were not from Apollo's light, but from Echidna's breath, the Serpent Mother still speaking through those who could listen. To go deeper into her myth is to see that Echidna embodies the hidden balance between heaven and the underworld, between order and chaos, masculine and feminine, law and instinct. She is the current beneath the current, the pulse that keeps the universe alive. In her silence, she holds the memory of the time before Zeus, when creation was a dance of equal forces, not a kingdom ruled by fear. The ancient mystics taught that to awaken the serpent within, to face Echidna, is to confront one's own primal power. The Serpent Mother tests those who seek enlightenment, for true wisdom is never granted freely. It must be earned through descent into the dark, through the shedding of false skins. In this way, Echidna is both the guardian of the threshold and the path itself, the one who devours the unworthy and transforms the brave. And so, the myth of Echidna, twisted and buried beneath centuries of Olympian dominance, remains one of the most forbidden tales of ancient Greece. It speaks of a truth that Zeus himself could never extinguish, that the serpent is not the enemy of heaven but its foundation. In the coiling depths of the earth, where the fires still breathe and the stones still whisper, the Serpent Mother waits, not as a monster, but as memory. And to those who dare to look beyond the thunderbolt, she still offers her ancient gift, the knowledge that all creation is rebirth, and that wisdom, no matter how deeply buried, always finds a way to rise again. Before the age of reason, before the first spark lit the dark world of mortals, there was Prometheus. He was not born among the Olympians, but among the elder race of Titans, those who remembered the world before Zeus's thunder. While many Titans fought against the new god-king and were cast into Tartarus, Prometheus stood apart. He did not raise a weapon against Zeus, nor did he fully bow to him. He belonged to neither world, and in that liminal space, Prometheus found the power to shape a destiny unlike any other. Prometheus means forethought. He was known not for brute strength like Atlas, nor for storm or flame like Hyperion, but for something more dangerous: intelligence. He was the one who could see ahead, who understood the hidden mechanisms of the cosmos. Where Zeus ruled by force and law, Prometheus moved in shadow and vision. He was the quiet fire beneath the world's surface, the whisper in the mind that says, "You can be more." When the gods first shaped humankind from clay, mortals were fragile, helpless creatures. They had no shelter from winter, no warmth, no knowledge. Zeus looked upon them not as children, but as subjects, beings meant to remain weak, dependent on the will of Olympus. But Prometheus saw something the others did not. He saw potential, a flicker in human eyes that mirrored the divine itself. He knew that if humanity was to survive, it needed a gift greater than worship, the gift of fire. But fire, in the language of myth, is more than flame. It is consciousness, the light of reason, creativity, rebellion, and the power to shape destiny. Fire is the divine spark, the same essence the gods guard to maintain their thrones. To give fire to humanity was to share godhood itself. It was an act of rebellion, not against law, but against a hierarchy that sought to keep mortals in darkness. And so, one night while Olympus slept, Prometheus stole the flame from the forge of Hephaestus, or, in some tellings, from the very chariot of the sun. He concealed it within a hollow fennel stalk, a living torch, and carried it down the mountain to the world of men. When humans touched this fire, their world changed forever. They built hearths to survive the cold, forged tools to shape the earth, lit beacons in the night to banish fear, but most importantly they began to think, to dream, to question. When Zeus discovered this theft, his fury was beyond measure. Fire was not meant to be shared. By giving it away, Prometheus had made gods of mortals, creatures capable of defiance, invention, and creation. In this moment, Zeus did not see humanity as mere mortals anymore. He saw them as a threat, and so came the punishment. Prometheus was seized by Zeus's servants and taken to a desolate cliff in the Caucasus Mountains. There the god-king commanded that he be chained to the rock with unbreakable bonds. Each day a great eagle, the sacred bird of Zeus, would descend from the skies and tear out Prometheus's liver, feasting upon it while he screamed. Each night, the organ would regrow, and the torment would begin again, an eternal punishment for an eternal act of defiance. But what Zeus did not understand is that punishment could not undo the gift. Once the fire is lit, it cannot be unlit. Humanity now carried within it the power of Prometheus, the power to stand, to question, to imagine. His suffering became a mythic mirror of human struggle, the price paid for enlightenment, the crucifixion of knowledge at the altar of power. Ancient initiates saw in this story not just cruelty, but initiation. The Promethean ordeal represents what every seeker faces when they choose light over obedience. Knowledge burns. It can isolate, punish, and awaken forces far greater than oneself. But it is also the only path to true freedom. In the Orphic and later Hermetic traditions, Prometheus is not merely a titan. He is the Lightbringer, the awakener of humanity. Curiously, myths of a divine rebel who gives forbidden knowledge appear across many civilizations. Just as Prometheus stole fire from Zeus, the serpent in Eden offered Adam and Eve the fruit of knowledge. In other myths, the Sumerian god Enki gives wisdom to humanity against the will of the high gods. The theme is always the same. A god defies the cosmic order to awaken humanity. The price is always suffering, yet the story does not end on the cliff. In time, the hero Hercules, would come upon the bound Prometheus. Moved by his suffering, he slew the eagle with a single arrow and shattered the chains. But even then, Prometheus's freedom came with conditions. Zeus allowed it not as forgiveness, but as recognition. The Titans' rebellion could not be erased from history. Humanity had already claimed the fire. This myth also hides a subtler truth, one whispered by philosophers like Plato and echoed in the mystery schools. Prometheus did not simply give fire to humanity. He awakened the fire that was already there. The fennel stalk is a symbol of the human body. The flame represents the divine spark within. Prometheus's true gift was not an external tool, but the reminder of what humans already are, bearers of divine consciousness. That is why Zeus could not fully destroy him. To erase Prometheus would be to erase the flame itself, and that flame is woven into the fabric of existence. In later philosophical interpretations, especially in the writings inspired by Aeschylus and Orphic thought, Prometheus became a symbol of creative rebellion, of the hero who suffers for humanity's awakening. Some mystics even saw in his agony a foreshadowing of future savior myths, the god who suffers for mankind, bringing light through pain. But perhaps the most forbidden aspect of the Promethean myth is this. It suggests that divinity is not a gift from the gods. It is an act of theft, of claiming power that was never meant to be handed down. Prometheus teaches that the sacred flame belongs to no king, no god, no authority. It is the birthright of consciousness itself. His chains may have been shattered by a hero, but his true liberation came the moment humanity lit its first fire. And even now, whenever we reach beyond the limits imposed upon us, in science, art, or spirit, it is Prometheus who lives in that spark. He is the flame in the darkness, the rebel who would rather burn than kneel, the eternal reminder that no throne can contain the light. Before the reign of Zeus crystallized into the pantheon we know today, there existed a current of divine intelligence that flowed beneath the surface of Olympus, subtle, elusive, and feminine. Her name was Metis, the first great love and counselor of Zeus, and the embodiment of divine wisdom itself. Yet in the grand tapestry of Greek mythology, her name was nearly erased, her story buried beneath patriarchal retellings that sought to redefine power as purely masculine. But long before Athena emerged from the brow of Zeus, there was Metis, the true mother of wisdom, whose sacrifice shaped the destiny of gods and mortals alike. Metis was one of the Oceanids, daughters of Oceanus and Tethys, born from the primal waters that predated the Olympian order. She represented cunning intelligence, strategy, and insight, not the cold intellect of logic, but the living, intuitive understanding of nature and cosmic law. While other deities ruled through thunder, fire, or brute force, Metis reigned through thought. She was the mind behind creation's mysteries, the whisper behind every strategy, and the clarity that allows chaos to find form. In the time of the Titanomachy, when Zeus waged war against his father Cronus, it was Metis who guided him. She was the architect behind his victory, teaching him how to deceive Cronus and free his swallowed siblings, Poseidon, Hades, Hera, Demeter, and Hestia. The liberation of the Olympians was not an act of might, but of intellect. Without Metis, Zeus would have remained one more child devoured by time itself. Her wisdom birthed the era of the Olympians, yet her own light would soon be consumed by the very god she saved. According to the old myths, Gaia and Uranus prophesied that Metis would bear children mightier than their father, a daughter who would equal Zeus in wisdom, and a son who would overthrow him. Fearing the same fate as his father, Zeus made a choice both brilliant and terrible. He tricked Metis into transforming herself, first into water, then into air, fire, and finally into a fly. At that moment, he swallowed her whole, believing he could contain her power. But what Zeus did not realize was that wisdom cannot be devoured. It transforms. Within him, Metis continued to exist, not as a prisoner, but as a living voice. From the depths of his being, she became the divine counsel that guided every decision he made. The Greeks said Zeus never acted without consulting the wisdom in his belly. Metis became his intuition, the inner oracle that whispered truths even he could not comprehend. And in time, her child Athena was born, not from a womb, but from the mind. She erupted from Zeus's forehead, fully grown, armored, and radiant with knowledge. But the myth forgets that Athena's true mother was not Zeus, but Metis. In this light, the story transforms from a myth of domination into one of transmutation. Zeus's act of swallowing Metis symbolizes the masculine attempt to absorb and control the feminine principle of wisdom. Yet the wisdom he consumed did not die. It was reborn within him, ensuring that even the king of the gods would forever carry the feminine within. Every lightning bolt he hurled was guided by her thought. Every law he decreed was whispered by her hidden voice. The ancients knew that Metis was not destroyed. She was internalized, turned from an external goddess into an inner force. In philosophical terms, Metis represents Sophia, divine wisdom itself, the spark of understanding that moves through all living things. Some mystery traditions believe that when humans think, when they intuit or create, they are channeling Metis, the eternal current of awareness that predates the gods themselves. But her erasure from myth was no accident. As Greek society evolved from matriarchal to patriarchal systems, goddesses like Metis, Rhea, and Gaia were rewritten or diminished, their stories replaced by the triumph of male deities. The birth of Athena from Zeus alone was a mythic justification for a world that no longer wished to acknowledge the feminine origin of intellect and creation. In truth, every spark of genius, every flash of insight, carries the echo of Metis's breath, the first whisper of divine thought. Her legacy lingers in the symbolism of the serpent and the owl, two ancient emblems of wisdom. The serpent, representing the coiled intelligence of the earth, and the owl, the seeing in darkness of intuitive knowing, both trace back to Metis. Athena inherited these symbols, but they were her mother's long before her. Metis is the hidden intelligence of the universe, the secret logic of dreams, the rhythm of tides, the instinct of survival, and the artistry of creation. In a deeper sense, Metis is what lies beyond reason. She is the subtle art of knowing when to act, when to yield, and when to transform. To invoke Metis is to reconnect with that ancient current of wisdom buried within, the voice that knows without needing to explain. In the quiet, when intuition speaks louder than logic, it is her whisper you hear. And so, The tale of Metis is not one of tragedy, but of transcendence. Though devoured, she became eternal, the unseen mind behind the mind, the goddess within gods. Her story reminds us that true wisdom cannot be destroyed or silenced. It only changes form, waiting to rise again when the world is ready to listen. Metis, the mother of wisdom, the voice within, the first thought of the universe, forgotten by myth but never lost to time. Among the Olympians, none was more mysterious, misunderstood or dangerous than Dionysus, the god of wine, ecstasy, and divine madness. But to call him simply the god of revelry is to miss his true essence. Dionysus was far older, far deeper, and far more cosmic than the festivals and feasts that later bore his name. He was the twice-born, the god who died and returned, embodying the eternal cycle of destruction and rebirth, not just in nature, but in the soul of humankind. Before the Olympians, before even Zeus's thunder echoed across the heavens, there was another Dionysus, Zagreus, the child of Persephone and Zeus. In the Orphic mysteries, this first Dionysus was destined to inherit the throne of the cosmos, for he carried within him both the light of the heavens and the shadow of the underworld. The Titans, driven by jealousy and fear, tore him apart, dismembered him into pieces, while he played innocently with celestial toys. They devoured his flesh, and in their act of violence, the seed of humanity was sown. For when Zeus struck the Titans down with his lightning, the ashes that remained contained both the divine essence of Dionysus and the base matter of the Titans. From this mixture, humankind was born, beings of dual nature, carrying within both godly spirit and chaotic instinct. Thus, Dionysus was not merely a god, he was the mirror of humanity. We are, all of us, fragments of his torn body, seeking to remember our wholeness. The Orphic initiates believed that to truly know Dionysus was to awaken the divine within oneself, to die to the illusion of separateness and be reborn into unity. The myth of his death and rebirth was not just a story. It was a spiritual formula, a secret of transformation whispered in the hidden temples of ancient Greece. Zeus, mourning the loss of his divine son, gathered what remained, the still beating heart of Dionysus. He gave it to Semele, a mortal princess of Thebes, conceiving the god once more in her womb. But Semele's human form could not withstand the full radiance of Zeus's divine presence. When Hera, jealous and cunning, tricked Semele into demanding that Zeus reveal himself in all his glory, the thunderbolt incinerated her. Yet, from her ashes, the unborn Dionysus was rescued, sewn into Zeus's thigh until the time of his birth. Thus, he was born twice, once from the womb of a mortal, once from the flesh of a god. This duality defines his power, mortal and immortal, chaos and order, body and spirit. Dionysus walks between worlds, the liminal god who belongs neither to Olympus nor to Hades, but to the space between, where transformation happens. The Greeks feared and revered him equally. To encounter Dionysus was to face the wild truth of existence, that creation and destruction, joy and sorrow, intoxication and clarity, are not opposites but reflections of the same divine pulse. His rites, known as the Dionysian mysteries, were not mere drunken revels. They were sacred ceremonies of release, where initiates shed the masks of civilization and touched the raw essence of life. Through music, dance, and ecstasy, they sought to dissolve the boundaries of the self, to reunite with the god torn apart and reborn within them. In ancient amphorae and temple carvings, Dionysus is often shown surrounded by maenads and satyrs, beings consumed by divine frenzy. But beneath the madness lies a truth. The maenads symbolize the soul's liberation from constraint. In surrendering to ecstasy, they entered states of divine communion where the mind could no longer control the heart, and spirit overtook the flesh. In that holy madness, the soul remembered its divine origin, the light of Dionysus within. Philosophers like Plato and later Nietzsche would glimpse the deeper meaning of Dionysus. Plato saw him as the divine intoxication that opens the path to truth, the inspired madness that precedes enlightenment. Nietzsche would call him the symbol of life's ecstatic affirmation, the acceptance of existence in all its chaos and beauty. Dionysus stands as the eternal reminder that life is both creation and dissolution, and to reject either is to reject the fullness of being. But his story also conceals an ancient secret. Dionysus may not have been Greek at all. His worship bears the marks of older foreign mysteries. Thracian, Phrygian, and even Egyptian influences. Some historians believe he was originally a chthonic god, a lord of the underworld and fertility, later merged into the Olympian framework. Others see him as the Greek echo of Osiris, the Egyptian god who was also dismembered and resurrected. In this sense, Dionysus was not a local deity, but a universal archetype, the eternal god of rebirth who transcends cultures and ages. Even his symbols tell this story. The vine that dies each winter and rises each spring, the wine which transforms simple fruit into liquid spirit, the mask, which conceals truth yet reveals it through performance. Each represents transformation, the essence of Dionysus. To drink his wine was not merely to indulge, but to taste the sacrament of mortality and eternity intertwined. In the later mystery schools, especially the Orphic and Eleusinian traditions, Dionysus was not feared as a god of madness, but venerated as a savior, the one who shows that through death comes life, through suffering comes awakening. His followers spoke of the divine spark imprisoned in flesh, yearning to return to its source. Through ritual death, through ecstatic vision, they sought to reunite with the cosmic Dionysus, the god who had already lived their pain and triumphed beyond it. In the heart of his myth lies a profound truth that divinity is not separate from mortality, but born through it. Dionysus teaches that to be human is to be torn apart by love, by loss, by longing, and yet through that very tearing to rediscover the divine whole. The madness he brings is not insanity but liberation, the moment when the walls of the self crumble and the infinite floods in. Dionysus, the twice-born, is the reminder that resurrection is not a promise of the afterlife. It is a transformation available now within the living heart. He is the pulse of the cosmos that beats within every soul, the wild cry that shatters illusion, the laughter that follows the storm. He is the God who died so that life itself could be reborn, again and again, within all who dare to remember. High upon the slopes of Mount Parnassus, shrouded in curling vapors that rose from the heart of the earth, stood the temple of Apollo at Delphi, the navel of the ancient world. Here, where the mortal and divine intertwined, seekers from kings to wanderers came bearing offerings, each desperate for a glimpse of the future. Yet beneath the public spectacle of prophecy, there lay something far older and more mysterious, a hidden code, a system of divine communication that transcended language, logic, and time itself. The Oracle of Delphi was not merely a priestess uttering riddles in trance. She was the living conduit between worlds, the mouth of Gaia, the whisper of Apollo, the interpreter of the cosmos itself. The ancients called her the Pythia, named after the python, the great serpent slain by Apollo upon his arrival at Delphi. But the myth of the serpent's death concealed a profound transformation, the victory of the solar principle, Apollo, light and order, over the chthonic power, Python, earth and chaos. Yet, even in death, the serpent's breath remained, rising as vapors from the earth, filling the chamber where the Pythia sat upon her tripod. The very voice that guided empires was still, in truth, the echo of the serpent, the primal intelligence of Gaia, now veiled in the language of gods. When the Pythia entered her trance, she did not speak of the future in plain words. Her prophecies came as symbols, paradoxes, and riddles, each carrying multiple layers of meaning. To the uninitiated, they seemed maddeningly ambiguous. To the wise, they were keys, encoded messages that revealed the hidden architecture of fate. Know thyself, inscribed at the entrance of the temple, was not a moral command but a cipher, the foundation of the oracle's code. For in knowing oneself, one unlocks the pattern through which the gods speak. Every word of the oracle was a reflection of cosmic duality, light and shadow, fate and choice, order and chaos. Those who came to her sought certainty, but what she offered was clarity through uncertainty. The ambiguity was intentional. Prophecy, like truth, cannot be given, only discovered. Her words forced the seeker inward into contemplation until the answer was not found in her voice, but in the silence of their own soul. The philosophers of later ages suspected that the oracle's cryptic style was not mere mysticism, it was a sophisticated system of consciousness. The Pythia's riddles trained the mind to perceive reality through symbols rather than literal thought. Every phrase, every contradiction mirrored the structure of the universe itself, a web of meanings that could only be grasped by those who thought in metaphor, the true language of the divine. In this sense, The code of the oracle was not written in letters or numbers, but in vibration and correspondence. Her utterances, filtered through trance, were expressions of what the ancients called logos, the living intelligence that connects all things. To interpret the oracle was to align oneself with the same frequency through which the cosmos speaks. In later centuries, Hermetic and Pythagorean initiates would decode her words using the principles of geometry, harmony, and proportion, believing that prophecy and mathematics were two sides of the same truth. But beneath even this intellectual decoding lay something deeper still, the spiritual technology of the oracle. The Pythia's trance was induced by sacred ritual, fasting, purification, the burning of laurel leaves, and the inhalation of ethereal vapors. Modern minds dismiss these as superstition, yet initiates understood them as a deliberate process of altering consciousness. Through controlled breath, rhythm, and sound, the Pythia entered the threshold between waking and dream, the noetic realm, where the symbols of the divine reveal themselves. This was the science of prophecy, an art later mirrored in the practices of shamans, mystics, and seers across cultures. To the secret schools of Delphi, the oracle was more than a temple. It was a machine of consciousness, a living interface between the human mind and the cosmic intelligence that orders existence. The code was not meant to predict events, but to awaken awareness. Each prophecy was a mirror, forcing the listener to confront the truth of who they were and the hidden motives driving their fate. The most dangerous seekers were not the ones who asked for the future, but those who asked about truth. For them, the oracle spoke not of external events but of initiation. They were given riddles designed to break the ego, to dismantle illusion, to reveal the God within. To these few, the oracle whispered the hidden doctrine of Delphi. All answers lie within, for the gods speak in the language of your soul. Even the myths surrounding the oracle contain this encoded wisdom. The slaying of the python, the sacred laurel of Apollo, the tripod of bronze, each was an alchemical symbol. The python represented the raw life force of nature, the laurel, purification through light, and the tripod, the threefold nature of reality, body, soul, and spirit. When the Pythia sat upon the tripod, she became the axis between these worlds, uniting them into one current of divine expression. As centuries passed, Delphi's power waned, and the temple fell silent. But the code of the oracle did not die. It migrated, first into the philosophical schools of Greece, then into Hermeticism, alchemy, and mysticism. The same logic of symbolic truth can be found in the cryptic verses of the Sibylline prophecies, in the geometries of Plato's Academy, in the riddles of Jesus's parables, and in the mantras of Eastern mystics. The oracle's code became the foundation of all esoteric language, truth hidden within paradox, revelation concealed within riddle. Today, her voice still whispers to those who know how to listen. It speaks through synchronicities, dreams, coincidences, and intuition. The code has evolved, no longer carved in stone or uttered in trance, but woven into the patterns of our own consciousness. When you experience a moment of insight that seems to come from nowhere, when a symbol repeats itself until you cannot ignore it, that is the oracle speaking through time, through you. The ancients believed the last prophecy of Delphi was uttered when the Christian emperor Theodosius shut the temple. Tell the king that the beautiful hall has fallen. Apollo has no roof. The oracle is silent. But perhaps the oracle never truly fell silent. Perhaps her voice simply turned inward, retreating from stone to spirit, from temple to mind. For the code of the oracle was never meant to be deciphered by scholars, but remembered by souls. It lives wherever wisdom hides behind mystery, and wherever a seeker dares to ask not, "What will happen?" but "Who am I?" In the beginning, before Olympus rose and before the Titans were chained, the cosmos was written in blood. Not the mortal kind that pulses through veins, but a divine essence, luminous and alive, the ichor of the gods. It was said that a single drop of this celestial fluid could bestow immortality, ignite madness, or awaken the soul to powers beyond comprehension. Yet few knew that this ichor was not simply the life force of divine beings. It was the very fabric of creation, the current that flowed between matter and spirit, heaven and earth. When the ancients spoke of blood, they spoke in symbols. To them it was not only life but memory, the record of all that has been, encoded within the living essence of the universe. In the Orphic hymns, The gods were born not of dust or flame, but of sacred blood that dripped from the wounds of the heavens. And in this crimson current, consciousness found form. The Greeks called it ichor, the lifeblood of the divine, radiant gold in color, said to shimmer like liquid sunlight. When spilled, it could awaken the earth itself. The most ancient myths tell that ichor first appeared when Uranus, the sky father, was wounded by his son Cronus. As the sickle cut through his divine flesh, drops of ichor fell upon the sea, and from that mingling of divine blood and salt water, Aphrodite was born, radiant and eternal. Thus, the blood of the gods became the seed of life, giving birth to beauty, love, and desire. But it also gave rise to vengeance and transformation. For wherever divine blood touched the world, it changed it, bending the laws of nature to mirror the eternal. The poets whispered that this was the true secret of creation. Every living being carries within them a spark of ichor, diluted through ages, hidden within the mortal heart. The Olympians ruled the heavens, but it was through this buried fragment of divine blood that humanity remained connected to them, capable of remembering what it means to be divine. Legends of demigods, Heracles, Perseus, Helen, Orpheus, were not mere tales of half-mortal heroes. They were echoes of this truth, that to possess the blood of the gods was to stand between two worlds, torn between immortality and decay, enlightenment and madness. The demigod is a symbol of the human condition itself, a being aware of its divine origin, yet trapped in a mortal shell. The ancients believed that ichor was not only in the gods' veins, but in the cosmos itself. The rivers, the stars, the veins of the earth, all pulsed with this same golden current. When the gods were wounded in myth, they bled not just onto the ground, but into reality itself. Their wounds became doorways, thin places where the divine and the human could meet. These sites would later become temples, sanctuaries, oracles, places where mortals could taste a drop of that immortal essence through vision, trance, or sacred ritual. One such ritual, forbidden to all but initiates, was known as the libation of ichor. It was never blood literally drawn from the gods, but a potion crafted to mirror its symbolic power, a mixture of honey, wine, herbs, and gold dust taken in sacred silence. The initiate drank it not to gain immortality, but to remember it, to awaken the divine spark already within. The secret was always this: the blood of the gods flows through all things, and through reverence, silence, and transformation, one could feel it moving again. Yet the myths also warned, divine blood is a double-edged gift. To touch it unprepared was to invite ruin. The story of Tantalus tells of a mortal who dared to serve the food of the gods to men, a crime punished by eternal torment. Niobe, who boasted of her divine lineage, was turned to stone. The ancients understood what modern minds often forget. The divine is not meant to be possessed, only remembered. The ichor within us cannot be forced into awakening. It must rise through wisdom, sacrifice, and inner purification. In the mystery traditions, particularly those of Orpheus and later Pythagoras, initiates were taught that ichor was the bridge between the soul and the stars. It connected the microcosm of the human body to the macrocosm of the universe. The heart, they said, was its crucible, the vessel where mortal and immortal met. To purify the heart through virtue, discipline, and ecstasy was to refine one's own inner ichor, to make the soul luminous enough to withstand divine light. Some texts even suggest that the gods themselves were once mortal, who through purification of their ichor ascended beyond the cycles of life and death. This notion, radical for its time, implied that divinity could be attained, not just inherited. It was the central heresy of the mystery schools, that the difference between gods and men was not nature, but awakening. The gods were those who remembered their light completely. Mortals were those who had forgotten. And so, the blood of the gods became both a literal myth and a spiritual metaphor, a reminder of our potential for transcendence. It is the same essence that the mystics of every culture have sought, the prana of the East, the ruach of the Hebrews, the spiritus of the alchemists. All are names for the same eternal current, the golden lifeblood that animates existence. Yet beneath its beauty lies a warning, for the same force that grants creation also demands balance. When the gods themselves forgot the sanctity of their blood, when they used it to breed power and pride, the cosmos trembled. The wars of heaven, from the fall of the Titans to the vengeance of Hera, were not just political, they were cosmic corrections. Each drop of spilled ichor carried the weight of consequence. Power, untempered by wisdom, corrupts even the divine. In humanity, this same drama unfolds. We too carry the blood of gods and the arrogance of titans. Within us flows the same potential for light and ruin. But perhaps this is the ultimate lesson hidden in the myth, that the blood of the gods is not a privilege, but a responsibility. To awaken it is to remember not just power, but compassion, reverence, and the unity of all life. When the ancients gazed at the stars and saw them bleed their light into the void, they saw the reflection of this truth. That creation itself is an act of sacrifice. The divine bleeds into matter so that consciousness might awaken. The universe is the wound through which eternity learns to see itself, and thus the blood of the gods flows still, in the rivers, in the roots of trees, in the pulse beneath your skin. Every heartbeat is its echo, every breath its continuation. For the gods were never above us. They were within us, waiting to remember themselves through the rhythm of our lives. The ichor flows unseen, yet it binds the cosmos. To remember it is to awaken. To awaken is to become divine once more. Hidden deep within the myths of ancient Crete lies a story that the Greeks often whispered but rarely told in full. The tale of the Labyrinth and the creature it contained, the Minotaur, a monstrous hybrid born of divine punishment and human hubris. On the surface, it is a story of a hero's bravery and a monster's defeat. Beneath the surface, it is a mythic map of the human soul, a coded allegory of fear, desire, and the eternal struggle between instinct and intellect. The labyrinth itself was no mere prison. Crafted by the masterful Daedalus at the command of King Minos, it was a twisting, impossible structure, a place where space and logic lost meaning. Each corridor folded into another, each passage seemed endless, and the center, the dark heart of the maze, held the Minotaur, a being that was neither fully human nor fully beast. Its form was a grotesque union, the body of a man, the head of a bull. It represented the raw, untamed nature that lurks within every mind, the impulses and shadows that civilization seeks to suppress. The Minotaur was born not from love, but from transgression. Poseidon, the god of the seas, had sent a sacred bull to King Minos as a token of divine favor. Yet Minos, in his arrogance, kept the animal for himself. In retaliation, Poseidon cursed his wife Pasiphae to desire the bull. From this unnatural union came the Minotaur, a living reminder that hubris and desire intertwine to create monsters. In essence, the Minotaur was not merely a creature of flesh, but a symbol of the consequences when human ego seeks to dominate the divine order. Each year, Athens was forced to send 7 youths and 7 maidens to Crete, destined to wander the labyrinth and meet the beast. These were not sacrifices of mere flesh. They were rites of passage, symbolic confrontations with the dark, primal currents within the self. To face the Minotaur was to face one's inner labyrinth, the tangled corridors of fear, lust, and shadow that every soul must navigate. Enter Theseus, the hero, who is often remembered for his courage and cunning. Yet the myth, when examined esoterically, reveals something more profound. Theseus did not merely slay the Minotaur with brute force. He was guided by Ariadne, daughter of Minos, who gave him the thread, a simple lifeline that allowed him to trace his path back through the maze. Here lies a hidden truth. Wisdom and guidance are necessary to navigate the labyrinths of the mind. Courage alone cannot bring victory. One must also have strategy, insight, and connection to higher knowledge. The thread is the symbol of consciousness, the slender line of reason and awareness that can guide one safely through the chaos of instinct and shadow. The Minotaur itself is not simply a monster to be destroyed. It is a part of the soul to be integrated. In Jungian terms, the beast represents the shadow, those aspects of the self we deny or fear, yet cannot escape. To enter the labyrinth is to descend into the subconscious, to confront rage, lust, greed, and terror. To slay the beast is not to annihilate it, but to master it, to bring light into darkness, to transform instinct into power, and to reclaim the parts of the self lost in fear. Daedalus, the creator of the labyrinth, is equally symbolic. He represents human ingenuity and the mind's ability to shape reality, yet also the danger of overreaching. His designs are perfect, but they are also traps. The labyrinth is a reminder that knowledge without wisdom can become imprisonment. Many who enter its corridors may wander endlessly, lost to their own cleverness, their own illusions. The myth carries yet another layer of esoteric meaning. The Minotaur is sometimes linked to ancient bull worship, a cultic symbol of vitality, fertility, and the raw forces of nature. Bulls were creatures of the earth's primeval power, representing both creation and destruction. The union of human and bull in the Minotaur is a cosmic metaphor, the collision of divine instinct and mortal intellect, the struggle to harmonize the spiritual and the animal within. Moreover, the labyrinth is a symbol of time and initiation. To navigate it is to undergo a symbolic death and rebirth. Each step through the twisting corridors mirrors the cycles of life, where one must confront fear, endure uncertainty, and seek the thread of truth to emerge transformed. Theseus's victory is less about the Minotaur's death than about the mastery of the journey itself, a narrative that echoes in countless myths, mystery schools, and esoteric traditions across the world. Even in later interpretations, the labyrinth and Minotaur serve as archetypes of the human condition. The paths we wander, the monsters we fear, and the threads we cling to all mirror the internal architecture of our consciousness. We are all Theseus in the maze, all seekers of the thread, all in danger of being devoured by our own unmastered impulses. Yet, if we can navigate the darkness with courage, guidance, and insight, we too can reach the center, not to destroy, but to understand, integrate, and ascend. The story ends with Theseus leaving Crete, thread in hand, carrying both the victory and the lesson. The Minotaur is slain, yet its legacy remains eternal. The labyrinth continues to exist, in the twisting corridors of every mind, in the shadowy chambers of every heart, in the subtle architecture of the universe itself. To face the beast is to face reality, chaotic, dangerous, yet radiant with possibility. The labyrinth is not merely a prison, it is a gateway. The Minotaur is not merely a monster, it is the hidden force within that, once understood and integrated, grants the courage to walk fully in the world, unafraid of the darkness within or the chaos without. The maze lies within, the beast waits, the thread is offered. Will you take it? For centuries, the Olympians ruled the cosmos with an air of untouchable power. Zeus wielded thunder and law, Hera enforced order and vengeance, Poseidon stirred the seas, and Hades commanded the underworld. Their dominion seemed eternal, yet beneath the golden facades of Olympus, fault lines ran deep. The myths that survive hint at cracks in divine authority, rivalries that threaten to tear apart the celestial order, and the slow erosion of gods whose power was as fragile as it was absolute. This is the story of the fall of the Olympians, not as a cataclysmic apocalypse, but as a subtle unraveling, a warning that even divinity is bound by consequence. The first tremors of decline appeared in the fractures between gods and mortals. Humanity, once reverent and fearful, began to question, to challenge, to resist. Heroes such as Heracles, Odysseus, and Orpheus did not simply serve the gods. They tested them, outwitted them, and sometimes transcended them. Mortals began to mirror divine intelligence, cunning, and resilience, revealing that the Olympians' power relied not only on might, but on obedience. As mortals became cleverer, the gods grew increasingly insecure, and petty rivalries that were once manageable became dangerous fissures. Next came the internal wars, the hidden conspiracies among the gods themselves. Zeus, despite his omnipotence, could not escape prophecy, paranoia, or the echoes of his father Cronus's fate. He swallowed Metis to prevent being overthrown, yet the child of wisdom, Athena, rose anyway. Hera's jealous plots against Zeus's consorts and offspring created cycles of vengeance and tragedy. Poseidon's wrath against both gods and mortals caused untold destruction. Even Hades, whose kingdom lay hidden, watched as Olympus's arrogance threatened the balance of life and death. The very unity of Olympus was an illusion, one that could not withstand the pressures of pride, fear, and betrayal. The Titan's shadow never fully disappeared. In secret, remnants of the old order waited, plotting vengeance or waiting for weakness. Kronos, Rhea, Oceanus, and their children, those who had been cast down after the Titanomachy, lingered in the hidden crevices of the world, whispering promises of revolution to disillusioned gods and mortals alike. In some versions of the myth, it is foretold that if the Olympians falter, the Titans may rise again, reclaiming their lost dominion. The cosmic order was never secure. It was a delicate negotiation, constantly threatened by the forces of chaos. Yet perhaps the most insidious threat came from within the very nature of divinity. The gods were immortal, but their immortality was not synonymous with invincibility. They were bound by consequence and cosmic law. Every act of hubris, every betrayal, every misused gift created ripples, subtle at first, then growing into waves. Dionysus, the twice-born, exposed them to ecstasy, madness, and mortality in the hearts of mortals. Prometheus showed that knowledge could undermine fear. The oracles reminded all that wisdom and fate were beyond even Zeus's control. The Olympians' arrogance blinded them to the fundamental truth: power without humility is temporary. Humanity also played its part in the fall. Civilizations rose, faiths shifted, and the stories of the gods were rewritten. Temples crumbled, myths faded, and the worship of the Olympians was replaced by philosophies that emphasized inner divinity, reason, and morality, rather than fear and ritual. The gods who had once inspired awe now faced obsolescence, their authority dependent on memory and belief rather than real influence. In a sense, the mortals of the world, through knowledge, rebellion, and devotion to higher truths, became the catalysts of Olympus's decline. The fall of the Olympians is not a story of sudden destruction, but of transformation and displacement. Their reign ended not with fire and lightning, but with the quiet erosion of relevance. Zeus, Hera, Poseidon, and Hades remained, yet their influence diminished. Heroes and sages rose to embody virtues that the gods had once claimed as their own. The divine began to retreat into myth, allegory, and symbol, leaving mortals to grapple with the lessons hidden within. The gods' fall mirrors humanity's own journey. Immortality without wisdom is a prison, and power without understanding is fragile. Even in the silence of their diminished temples, whispers persist. The Olympians endure, not as rulers, but as archetypes, symbols of desire, jealousy, courage, and cunning. They are embedded in our stories, our dreams, our psyche, shaping us even as we forget them. The fall was not annihilation, but a reminder. Divinity exists not only above but within, and even the greatest powers must adapt or vanish. The legacy of their fall endures in the cautionary echoes of every myth. Hubris invites consequence, wisdom surpasses brute force, and the divine is not immortal because it is untouched, but because it teaches, transforms, and inspires. The Olympians, once absolute, now live in shadows. Their glory remembered, their lessons encoded in myth, and their presence felt wherever humanity seeks to balance ambition, morality, and understanding. The fall of Olympus is complete, yet eternal. For in their decline lies the seed of human ascension, the knowledge that divinity is not a crown, but a path, and that even gods are subject to the inexorable currents of change, consequence, and cosmic truth. The reign is over. The gods remain. But the world belongs to those who remember, who learn, and who dare to transcend. Long after the temples of Olympus had crumbled and the myths of the gods had faded into legend, a quieter, subtler force continued to burn, a force the ancients called the hidden flame. It was the secret wisdom of the cosmos, whispered not through thunder or lightning, but through symbols, symbols encoded in the minds of those who sought to know rather than rule. This was the flame of the philosophers, the seekers of truth who walked between worlds, illuminating the mysteries that the gods themselves could not fully disclose. The flame is said to have originated in the mystery schools of Greece, where priests, orphics, and initiates passed knowledge from teacher to student in secrecy. Here, philosophy was more than debate. It was a sacred practice, a method to ignite the mind, purify the soul, and awaken perception to realities beyond the senses. The hidden flame was not physical. It was a state of consciousness, a spark of awareness that allowed humans to touch the infinite without leaving the mortal realm. Among those who carried this flame were the pre-Socratic philosophers, thinkers like Thales, Pythagoras, and Heraclitus. To the uninitiated, they were mathematicians and natural philosophers, probing the structure of the universe, but their studies were deeply esoteric. They sought the underlying order and harmony, the principles that bind the cosmos, the same truths whispered by Metis, Prometheus, and the Pythia of Delphi. Pythagoras, in particular, taught that number is the essence of all things, a divine code, a vibration that connects matter and spirit, mortals and gods. To grasp these patterns was to touch the hidden flame, to see the world not as chaos, but as an ordered living system infused with intelligence. The flame was also the inheritance of the Orphic mysteries, where initiates underwent rites of death and rebirth, consuming sacred texts and ritual substances to awaken the inner light. The myth of Dionysus Zagreus, torn apart and reborn, symbolized this process. The soul must be broken to discover the spark within. In these secret rites, the philosophers discovered that the hidden flame resides inside every human, waiting to be kindled through discipline, reflection, and courage. This flame was not merely intellectual, it was transformative. The ancients believed it could purify the soul, aligning it with the divine rhythm of the cosmos. It was the spark that allowed mortals to transcend mortality, not through magic or worship, but through understanding, insight, and union with the eternal. To carry the flame was to become a bridge between heaven and earth, mortal and immortal, chaos and order. Yet the hidden flame was always guarded, for knowledge without wisdom is dangerous. The same flame that illuminates can also burn and destroy. Those who pursued it selfishly or without preparation often fell into delusion or ruin. This duality is echoed in the myths. Prometheus gave fire to humanity, yet suffered eternal punishment. Metis was swallowed to contain her power. Dionysus brought ecstasy and madness in equal measure. The flame is a gift, but only to those who respect its depth and responsibility. The philosophers, unlike the Olympians, understood that power is temporary, but wisdom endures. While Zeus wielded thunder to dominate, the philosophers sought the hidden patterns to liberate the mind. They studied geometry, music, astronomy, and ethics, recognizing that the universe is a mirror of the soul. Each insight was a spark, each revelation a flicker of the hidden flame illuminating the path through darkness. In later ages, this flame passed to the Hellenistic schools, the Neoplatonists, and the Hermetic traditions. They codified the wisdom in texts and symbols, veiling the truths in allegory, so only the worthy could perceive them. Alchemy, astrology, sacred geometry, and meditation were all expressions of the same pursuit, the rekindling of the hidden flame within, the awakening of the mind to the eternal pattern, and the alignment of the soul with cosmic law. Even today, remnants of this flame survive. Every philosopher, visionary, or seeker who peers beyond the illusions of the material world continues this ancient legacy. The flame manifests as intuitive insight, creative inspiration, and the courage to question reality itself. It is the hidden pulse behind human ingenuity, the spark that ignites discovery, art, and transformation. The hidden flame is both a gift and a responsibility. To nurture it is to embrace the pursuit of truth, to honor the mysteries, and to recognize that divinity is not above, but within. It is a silent, enduring force, the inheritance of those who have learned to listen to the whispers of the universe, a flame that burns still, even when the temples have fallen, the gods have faded, and the world has forgotten the names of the ancients. The hidden flame remains. It waits for those who dare to seek to understand and to awaken.